totally something. Okay. Welcome back to no, just kidding. Okay, so we are here at the professional development kickoff with Noah Smock at ToolBank USA. I'm Nicki Fiocco. I'm a board member at the DC AmeriCorps Alum chapter, which is an amazing chapter. And I feel so blessed to be able to be part of this group that has been carrying forward the service and work and spirit of alumni or AmeriCorps over the years. We're happy to have Libby, who is our board chair. So hi, Libby. We're so happy you're here. And Geoff, you are which committee are you on?
Service committee.
Service committee. So if you're looking to serve in your community in DC, we want you to serve with us. We also have Micah and Callie, who are also part of the board, and very excited to have everybody here. We are here to understand what happens when you get into a role and you're asked to do things where you're like, that's not really on my resume. Like, I don't have those skills. But as in a leadership role, you kind of have to figure things out. And I've been on the board of the Baltimore Community ToolBank for almost 7 years. Noah Smock was the executive director during that time. I literally watched him morph into so many different positions and also really turn the ToolBank not just into a tool dispensary where you can get tools and rent them in and out, but into a community. And so what I want to bring today and what Noah and I talked about is how to lean into your leadership when you have a very lean staff, high pressure, but high priority, and you are serving the servers. I think that's really what it comes down to for the tool banks across the country. And I'm excited also to introduce folks who do not know about the tool banks across the nation that are supporting everyday giving, fundraising, supporting nonprofits, schools in their region, in their community, but also disaster relief. So hopefully I didn't botch any of that. Noah, I want you to first start telling folks about your AmeriCorps service. Briefly, what service you did, what you did, and then we'll go into how you discovered you had to do things that were really not on your resume. Go for it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So credentials first, right? For the AmeriCorps crowd. We mentioned a little bit, but I served a class 5 AmeriCorps NCCC in Western region. So 1998-99 service year. I was a country kid from Ohio. I had a half day off of school where I could go to a job fair, pick a pencil from a girl that I thought was cute at a booth called AmeriCorps, and I had no idea what that was. But as I ended my high school career and I realized I did not have money really to go directly into college, even though I was accepted to one, I wanted to have this gap year. And I had never heard of a gap year before. I don't think we called it a gap back then. But I wanted to employ my talents somewhere that was meaningful to me, but also could help me further this cause for my education. So I went from, so it's funny, I'm in Baltimore, Maryland. I grew up in Baltimore, Ohio. Much more cornfields than row homes, but I joined AmeriCorps NCCC. I called that 800 number on the pencil. I talked to someone that had a phone interview. I got fingerprinted. I think I sent it in by mail. I ended up somehow filling out the forms correctly. And I was in class 5 of NCCC on the West Coast, serving at spikes or projects in San Diego and Northern California and Oregon, and just had an amazing kind of eye-opening experience from somebody who'd never really done service unless it was like my neighbor's yard or like a church group thing. So those are my credentials. Very, very happy to say that kind of through line of service is alive in my career today. And as Nicki mentioned, so I'm the director of development or resource development for the ToolBank, the National ToolBank, which is ToolBank USA. I will pop up a photo here or a map here in a moment just to show you like what the scope of our services are. But before I do the geographical scope, I'll talk just what is a tool bank. So it's a really simple concept, right? It literally is, it's not a metaphor. The tools are tools that you would find at like a Home Depot, but it's tools leveraged for community benefit through other service organizations. So if you're a community-based organization, if you have at the end of your day someone who's benefiting in society from what you do, our tools are available to you. And what we say, the easy way to say that is we serve the servers. We do that one way, but because needs are different, it shows up in different ways. We do that by stewarding a large inventory of quality tools that we call clean, sharp, and ready for any service project. That could be building a mini library at a school, to 300 people needing everything from power saws to shovels and rakes and drills to do a community-based project. So the scope we're kind of a blank canvas. It changes with every project, but we have a large inventory of tools, and that's what's important because we want to be able to say yes to every group that has need.
I'm going to add in there too. Sorry to interrupt you, but we talked about this. We said if you glaze over something, and I'm like, wait. So we talked about some power tools and everything. But if you're an organization that's holding a fundraiser and you don't have enough chairs, are the number one tool, I think still, maybe, I don't know, that are rented from the tool banks. So you can get 300 chairs for your fundraiser for pennies on the dollar. So you might not need a chainsaw, you might not need a wheelbarrow, but you might need a chair and a table. And the tool bank can do that. Sponsorship made by ToolBank. Just okay, go on.
Well,
sorry. Cool was NCCC having their phone number on a pencil. Let's bring that back.
Oh yeah, we're not for that. I would have lost the chain. That literally works. Best way to think about the ToolBank is we're disruptive. We consider it our business to source and share what community organizations are overpaying for. So that's where we get into tables, chairs, microphones, Wi-Fi hotspots, speakers. We can do that stuff because those are pain points for community-based organizations, nonprofits, but broader than that too. It could happen at the community level. If you have a pain point where you're saying, man, this fundraiser that we're going to host, we're going to spend $40,000 to get $60,000. Well, we might be able to take your cost for that special event down by 60% and the money back to the mission. And that's the whole thing. We exist to serve community-based groups under the idea that we know is true, which is too often in this sector, community organizations are overcommitted, under-resourced. They're asked to expect less. They're asked to do more with less. They're asked to do 7 different jobs. They're asked not to be paid overtime. We think that's not correct. We deserve nice things. We deserve to have access, and we deserve it in an intentional way that positions a tool bank not just as just some passive warehouse full of stuff. Like I always said, it's not just a guy in a warehouse or a girl in a warehouse with a bunch of shovels. It's an active, proactive, community-based asset where we literally try to share everything. So I was for 11 years the executive director of the Baltimore Community ToolBank. So really plugged into the Baltimore community, serving over 300 different unique organizations a year, over 1,000 orders, anything from, like Nicki said, could be a backpack giveaway at a school. If they want to do it outdoors, they can use our tables and chairs. One of my favorite projects was Wi-Fi hotspots to empower the Job Opportunities Task Force, which is a Baltimore-based organization. They were holding a brake light clinic. They were fixing people's brake lights. And you might wonder, like, what does this have to do with access to jobs and things? The idea was every brake light is a excuse to get pulled over in Baltimore City. Now we've got interventions or interactions with the police, all kinds of things. So if we simply hold a brake light clinic where we'll repair it for you, we might be able to avoid interactions with law enforcement that even if they're not bad, they could just be inconvenient. So we're the blank canvas, and any tool bank in any city is there so that the community organizations can say, here's how I would like to employ these tools in service to our mission. Typically when we loan, it's at 3 to 5% of the retail value. So if a drill costs you $100 at the store, you're going to get that for $5 a week from the Baltimore ToolBank. Concept is there a little bit of fee for service for our own stability, but really the idea that you can save and you can have the volume of tools that you need to say yes to the volume of volunteers that you want to engage. And I'll say a quick thing about disaster services. So locally in Baltimore, I served for 11 years as director of a very small staff. That's where most of this talk will be about today. But then in December of 2024, I became the director of development for ToolBank USA. What we really do is support the local affiliate, which are now in 12 cities. But we also have these disaster response warehouses and mobile units. So a growing fleet of mobile tools that can deploy anywhere in the United States within 72 hours of a disaster. As of right now, we've got 4 trailers in the Hurricane Helene corridor serving different groups. We're in Maui because we have a warehouse there. We're serving after double Kona storms hit a couple months ago. We're in Los Angeles with the LA wildfires. We're deployed in Central Texas Hill Country, which unfortunately had the second set of disastrous floods just a few weeks ago after 2025. So any given day, like my pipe dream is to have a documentary of one day in the ToolBank universe. What 7 a.m. on the West Coast looks like this, 3 p.m. on the East Coast looks like this. And we're just doing all this kind of service because it's an amazing amount of volume and stories. I feel deeply privileged to be a part of this network. I've felt that way since the day they said yes to this 34-year-old who had never been an executive director to become the executive director. And my more recent transition to the national, I'm still based in Baltimore. I'm still really plugged into the Baltimore community, but it really is the idea of taking a local legacy or local reputation and turning into a national legacy. And it's something that really goes back all the way to the pledge that I took as part of a entry-level.
That's such an amazing loop around back to the commitment that we make to our communities. First of all, amazing that y'all are deployed across the country still for disasters that have happened. I did see that there is a ToolBank in Hawaii. Do you want to pull that map up real quick? And then we can go into the crux of the conversation of what does it mean to be in such a high demand position? So tell us what we're looking at here, Noah.
Yeah. So the easy part is everywhere there's a dot, there's a physical presence of a ToolBank across the country, including, you can see down here in Puerto Rico and including in Maui. On the right, those are all the cities. The stratification of what a community ToolBank is versus disaster services, vitally important. What is, though, is if you are serving or if you hear of any need in any of these geographies, we have a physical presence there. We also have, through our growing fleet of mobile units, which currently numbers 25, everything from a 53-foot like tractor trailer all the way down to 24-foot pull behind and a fleet of trucks. We can actually get anywhere where you don't see a lot of dots. We can get anywhere. We've been to Bemidji. I'm just thinking things recently, like in the last year. There were windstorms in Bemidji, Minnesota. Our closest ToolBank is in Chicago. We were able to get there. We can get there with our mobile units. So that's important for disaster relief. And then the community ToolBanks, including the Baltimore ToolBank, where you kind of think of like a Habitat for Humanity model, where there's a local chapter with a director, with a board, but they're supported by the national efforts, be that fundraising, be that just resource sharing, knowledge sharing even. So everywhere there's a white dot, a blue dot, this dot. That is an actual community ToolBank, which is a brick and mortar. They loan in times beyond disaster relief, certainly leveraged for disaster relief, but they're the ones loaning to the community parks, to the schools, to any nonprofit, anybody organized for some community benefit that can pass the litmus test of proving that. That's who we're there to serve. And we're growing. I mentioned, I just clicked off of, it said like prospective cities, Nashville. We just had our second interviews for executive directors in Nashville. So we're opening that within a few months. So that map is very iterative. It's always changing.
And I'll just interject here real quick also but this is one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this to the network. I know we're focused, like this is the DC network, but I do know that we also serve the greater AmeriCorps alums chapters. And this is information that folks should know and be able to share across their network, especially through the alumni network that might not know about these tool banks in different parts of the country. I want to just double check real quick. Does anybody have any questions about the tool bank or anything?
Well, I feel like I have a million questions, but I'll wait to the end because I'm super excited. It's hard to curb my enthusiasm at this point.
I have one. How do people get in touch with you and to know that you have this stuff? Are you guys, is it mainly word of mouth? Is it, do you contact service projects?
Yeah, so in any local market, there's a lot of proactive outreach. And I'll just put myself on the spot. I'm a big NPR listener, so I listen to my local WYPR station in Baltimore. I am ear hustling for all their local programs when they feature some nonprofit. The other thing I did in a proactive manner was when I started in 2014, most community organizations had live meetings. They weren't all Zoom. So because I was like, everybody needs to know about this, I went to these community groups. I heard what they were working on, but did they have a greening committee? Did they have this? And I waited for public comments to say, hey, I'm going to introduce myself as a resource. So I say that because it was very analog. The word of mouth is the number one way, but we're even intentional about that. So when we loan an order, for example, their tools are branded. They usually say ToolBank. That's possible. They're blue. So we say blue tools, and tools for change are kind of our hashtags. To us, an order is a bulletin board or a billboard. It's an opportunity because if you're a community group that has hundreds of shovels all of a sudden, and everyone knows that you didn't buy them because they're all blue and you don't have space for them, people ask, where did you get that? So word of mouth is a powerful way. It's super grassroots at the local level. When I started, we were the third ever tool bank. So it was like the Wild West. Nobody had ever heard of this in any city, let alone Baltimore, where we just started. These days, it's a little bit different. We're actually getting people, I don't know if we're on that point in the exponential curve where everybody knows about us. I don't think we're there yet, but we will drive down the highway with a trailer, stop at a rest stop, and someone will be like, you helped my cousin in Hurricane Ida in New Orleans. We're hearing these crazy kind of stories. So there is advertising, but even at the national level, I mean, we're a leadership team of 8 people. Our staff is a little bit bigger. We might have up to 20 people that can deploy to disasters. Oh, the development department is a person's name for me right now. That's me. But we're contemplating this future, right? So what does it take to be like, this position is now a department? And I think we're at an inflection point with that. So that was a really long way to say, how do you get the word out? But all of those, but we're growing as well.
Go ahead, Geoff.
Yeah, is it okay? I mean, Noah, you mentioned solving a lot of pain points of local communities through the organizations. Who's solving your pain points right now? And what are some of the solutions that people are bringing to you?
So just what pain for is what's kind of emblematic of my time as an executive director with a small staff. In some ways, we are able to go as fast because we don't have 20 departments and 20 signatures. But a pain point might be, but do we have everything we need to grow appropriate to the demand? This kind of answers who's solving some of our pain points. When I came into this role, my head was down in Baltimore for 11 years. I was aware of ToolBank USA. I knew they were growing. I did not know the numbers. And all of a sudden I'm writing grants for ToolBank USA. So I really need to know those numbers. And it was kind of amazing, how we've grown, such that my role was not prospecting the top 100 foundations or corporations that might invest in our mission. It was applying for the ones that were asking us to apply with that coveted, here's your code to apply. That is not by any means to say that we don't have pain points around fundraising, but our portfolio at the national level disaster relief is interesting. You got to be real careful because it's super sexy, but then that also means people want to put a name on it and do it the way that they think is appropriate. And we have to kind of soft pedal people to be like, okay, this is what we do. You're welcome to invest in this if you invest in a way that doesn't change what we, and then we're not going to be taking ideas and doing any kind of prescriptive giving where we do it the way that you want to with the photo op or with the this. It's a careful terrain. So I will say our national funders are helping us scale. And I'll give you just a case example. The Nashville ToolBank is coming online because we got funding first. That's rare. We did not get funding first in Baltimore. Baltimore incorporated a board, and they said, as soon as you can raise $180,000, you can get a lease and hire a director. There was no money coming in. There was no money before. It was the want to have the thing. We're now at a point where funders like the American Red Cross, we applied for funding after Hurricane Helene. And they said, well, we could give you funding for your mobile units, or you could establish physical presence in Tennessee, where there is not really a ToolBank close. So that's really the first time that we followed. What I say is we are not reactive, we are receptive. If someone says, can you bring a ToolBank to this location and we have some funding, we will listen. We will say, if that makes sense for what we're doing, yes, we'll have the conversation. But those are some of the pain points. And those are some of the people that are helping us meet. Corporate foundations tend to be easier than family foundations because family foundations are typically tied to a geography where they don't want to do national. And corporations definitely do for reasons that are good and bad. They want to help more people. They also want a whole lot more photo ops, right? So we're kind of aware of this, and we're in that sandbox, but we're super serious about direct it to the thing that we already do. Don't make up something else that we don't do very well.
That is a perfect segue to how do you stay focused when you're an executive director? And you mentioned this with a lean staff with high priorities, and you can move super fast, but you can only move so fast as Noah can get the chairs off the thing, and Rachel, who's also is at the Baltimore Community ToolBank, could put it in the carrier and then get it out to the driveway to get it in people's cars. And if somebody isn't doing well, or so, I think that that's important. And I think it not only for the ToolBank example, we're actually physically doing this stuff, but for the mental lift for some folks that might listen to this later about how do I serve my mission and my people when I'm still juggling people. So you want to segue into like how you wrapped your mind around that?
Yeah. And actually, I'll start with a small anecdote that really brought home to me that my job was all of the above. So I got my executive director role in 2014 in January. And I had done development, I had done management, even on the corporate side, but I had never been the end of the line. I'd never done any executive leadership. And in a way, there was kind of a risk taken to hire me, but you've got to have your first executive role. If you ever become an executive, it's got to be the first one. So I was totally qualified for the job. I couldn't wait to do it. I was super energized, but I still had this kind of muscle memory of if something hits the fan, yeah, there's always someone above me, right? That might be a part of the problem, but it's not going to be blamed on me. And that totally changes when you're the executive, even if you're the executive of 2 to 3 people. I'll flash up a quick photo here just to nod to the AmeriCorps spirit of the Baltimore ToolBank. So that was one photo. Here's the other one. And this was actually Nicki's podcast. Very proud to say that the 2 people that filled out our staff for over 10 years, this is 100% of the Baltimore ToolBank staff from 2014, middle of 2014 until 2024, are all AmeriCorps alums. 2 and Triple C.
Cool.
Now, Geoff, you'll appreciate this. That A is on the left side. of my uniform. That's an old uniform. And you might even be able to see like some
Oh my gosh, yeah, because Marcus and
Oh yeah,
Rachel are on the right.
that's old school. Not only old logo, he's got the new one. But Rachel also served in Triple C, and Marcus was in volunteer Maryland. Oh, so just a quick shout out to the AmeriCorps of the Baltimore ToolBank. But I also put this photo up there to share them stuff. We were a super small staff. There's something great about being small, right? If we thought it was a good idea to do it, we could do it. And if it wasn't a good idea, we'd stop doing it. But at the same time, it's really hard to go into a staff meeting and say something like, as a team, we need to work on A, B, and C, because everybody knows, say you're talking about them. So if you have 12 people in a room, 5 people might say, that has nothing to do with me. If you have 2 people in a room and you're talking about, how do we do this better? It can get really tricky really quick. But I mentioned that, and I go back to my original kind of anecdote about when it came home to me that I would really have to be the one to make these decisions, and not only just be aware of that, but lean into it. So January 3rd, I got my job in January. July 5th, the day after 4th of July, 2014 was a Saturday. I remember because I was sneaking in to get some things done, which is also an earmark of a small team, right? Sneaking in on a Saturday like it's a favor and having your board tell you don't do that, and be like, oh, you can't take Saturdays away from me because that's when I get stuff done. So go in, it was a pretty hot day, and I realized on our front lawn, there is a dead groundhog. In my first thought, the muscle memory, right, was like, whose job is it to get rid of that? And of course, whose job? It's definitely, bro, it's your job. You've got to find a way to get rid of this thing. There's nobody, just think about that muscle memory. If you've ever worked for anybody, you're like, oh, well, there's someone that takes care of that, right? That's not really true when you're that small, the staff, and you're the quote unquote executives, which you are, but it's a small staff. So yeah, the end of that story results in me burying the groundhog almost, because we had sod on our lawn laid over concrete and I couldn't get down far enough. Then I couldn't quite bury it. I put a bunch of safety cones and boxes on it and just like we'll mow around it. But lo and behold, the next day, well, I guess Monday when I came back in, all the boxes were ripped up and the groundhog was gone. So we checked the cameras. We're next to railroad tracks, and a coyote
A coyote.
and did us a major favor, found the thing and got rid of it. So we didn't have to mow. But anyway, I had to go to share more for the leadership kind of realization that the responsibility to keep this place running, to do everything from IT to HR to purchasing to grant right to everything comes down to whoever signed up to be the executive. And that comes with a lot of responsibility, but also there's a lot of freedom. Nick and I have had many conversations about this, but when you're the person that decides what direction you go, no matter what the inputs were, there could be a senior leadership team, there could be people that you listen to from all corners of the organization. But when you're the one that puts your name on it to say, we're stepping positively forward here, that means you get the freedom to make those decisions because you will be on the hook for them, for better or for worse. And that's just, that's probably something everyone on this call has experienced to some degree, being part of a team, whether an executive or a leader over their time. But it's a massive difference between contributing to a team and deciding the direction of the team. And I think it bears some special consideration, whether you are the executive or whether you're the contributor, because I know what it's like to be part of the team when I wasn't the leader, and I'd walk away saying, I wouldn't do it like that. I didn't quite understand though that person had to synthesize everything they heard and still develop a direction and put their name behind, which I think is just one of those qualities of being in leadership, which undoubtedly people on this call have had some experience with.
I also want to add in there, and this has just been something that I've been mulling over because it's my own personal experience, and I think we're talking about leadership. And I also think there's a part where you can be a bit, I don't want to say vulnerable, but a little bit like transparent, where this is the process and this is my timeline, and these are the things that I'm thinking through where we might need to change these certain things. And I think it's important in leadership to think about, because I think one of the things we do is we protect staff from the decisions that we need to make, but then we make the decision. And then to them, it's been like, how did you make that decision? But in our minds, we've been mulling it around, trying to figure things out. So it's important for a leader to also figure out, what are the things that I could share that when it's almost like change management, right? Like, when it's time for me to share this new direction or this new whatever, what are the things that I need the folks that I'm leading to recognize that this is what I'm mulling around and this is my timeline. And I don't, it sounds like you really had to dance that line, especially like you said, when you're sitting in the room and there's three people and you're like, we need to change things. And it's like, well, I wasn't here yesterday, so what are we trying to change? So I just wanted to throw that in there because I think sometimes we iterate in our head and we don't recognize that the folks that we might be leading later don't know that you're thinking about this change. And then suddenly there's this change and they could be like, well, that was abrupt, but you've been thinking about it for a while. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Absolutely. And these constant questions, which I don't know if there is a right answer of, who do I bring into the thought process when? And when am I making an announcement about what we're doing? And when am I asking for feedback? The tricky part of being a super small staff was that it's kind of like we were in a band. We worked together for 6, 8 years. We didn't need to say, here's the set list. Someone just started and another person came. But how do you codify processes? How did you go from, this is my colleague who started part-time or as an intern, which was for one of them, and the other one was a fellow, AmeriCorps fellow. People I didn't know I was going to be working with in 10 years. Also, I changed and evolved. So when I met Rachel, who still works at the Baltimore ToolBank, I was 6 months into my tenure as an executive director. How do I get to grow and change? And what can she hang her hat on is being like, that's the way we do things. So this iteration, I think a lot of energy is spent, just for me at least, thinking, here's what I think is appropriate. This is decisive and we can move forward. But you also have to stop and make sure that you're not leaving points of view behind and that you're not actually missing wisdom, because you want to have the best possible outcome. I think the thing that guided us the most, our true north for everybody involved in the Baltimore ToolBank at any point, has been the passion for what we do. Actual service. We are constantly, we actually developed quite a bit of codified material. We have pillars and audiences and goal statements and how do we achieve those, and reflection sessions, all based on how do we find a way to say yes to the most amount of good without threatening the whole thing, right? We can't say yes to everything, because we don't want to be doing programs that aren't in what we do. But what if somebody in COVID lost access to their warehouse where they had school backpacks, but they could go for a 3-hour window and get all the backpacks out, and then where could they store them? Could they store them at the ToolBank? The answer was yeah. We found a way to say yes to that. COVID was another kind of fascinating challenge. Talk about something that we did not have a script for.
Yeah, I think that this is a perfect time to roll into almost crisis management, where, again, I was on the board at this time and there was a lot of mental gymnastics that was happening because, again, folks, don't forget what we talked about at the beginning of this hour. The ToolBanks serve the servers, and the servers were still serving, and the ToolBank still needed to figure out how to serve. So yeah, talk to us how you kind of did that mental gymnastics. And, obviously, hopefully folks won't have to go through this, but this might help a little bit about, I love how you said true north. And I want to double down on that. I think when your entire staff knows what are the priorities, that everything leads to that. And it makes decisions so much easier because it's like, does it feed into that? Not really. Then I don't think we should do it, especially during crisis management. So yeah, let's roll into that, Noah.
Yeah, that's the check. And we did two things as actual exercises. Defensible decisions, which I'll probably is self-explanatory, but I'll go a little bit deeper. And 5 times why, which probably needs a lot of explanation. Here were the compelling reasons we made decisions. And by the way, I no longer say, here's the reason I made that decision. I say, here's the compelling, meaning thought about it. I didn't just think it was a reason, like an excuse, like Noah wants this. The reason I think it's compelling. So defensible decisions is we're going to go through a critical thinking process that orients us with true north. How does this help us serve more people or serve the people that we're serving better? How do we go deeper or more? And I'll put it in a grant writing context. If you've ever written a grant before, which I imagine some has, you were asked things about number. Sometimes you're asked, how did you get to that number? But sometimes you're not asked, how do you get to that number? So I'm going to get very literal because I was writing a grant today to the Kroger Foundation. I write down every reason why I put that number in there in case I'm ever asked. And then I actually turn this into a Word document that is my logic for the grant. I am dying for someone to ask me, why did I put that number there? Because I did just throw off a number. I have an equation. I have some reason. And that's my defensible position. Not like I'm defensive, but I have a position worthy of defense. And here's what it looked like. And to me, that was huge as being director of so it's a small organization, but it's an enormous asset. So the responsibility is not just the jobs of the people that are showing that are 2 or 3 of us. It's also this thing that exists in Baltimore that is really hard to divorce from the community landscape. Like you can't take the Baltimore ToolBank away from Baltimore now because they rely on it. The community sector does. So every decision we made, we were gatekeepers. We decided who got access to tools. We got to be real serious and inclusive about what our biases are. We got to check a whole bunch of things if we're going to be a gatekeeper to a resource that the community deserves. So defensible decisions to me always meant, if scrutinized by any audience, board member, community member, staff, fellow executive director in another city, that I could say, here's my compelling reason to make that decision. And that's what our staff got used to as well.
Can I ask a quick question? I thank you so much for giving us like takeaways because I'm like defensible decisions. So when you're coming up with your defensible decisions, do you think about all your different stakeholders and think about like, what would they want to hear and what would they want to hear and what would they, because I don't know. Sorry, I'm totally taking us off topic.
Yeah.
This is like a Nicki, I want to know. Because what your board might want to know might be different from, or a funder. I don't know. Yeah.
I will say the outset, probably not perfectly, to be honest. However, we had spaces where I could pull up a monster of a spreadsheet. We had spaces where we did quarterly goals, goal setting, and goal reflection. So 1 week for 3 hours while the phone rang off the hook when we just said, don't answer it, we're doing this. We would do a reflection on the goals that we set out the previous quarter. And the audiences were part of that. So we literally went down to audiences include guests at special events, volunteers, social media audiences, board members, our colleagues, each other. Like we had service guarantees that we established. I think we wordsmithed it into oblivion, but then put it down, right? If you see that your colleague didn't finish a job, don't assume they're being a jerk. Give them the benefit of the doubt. Well, what were they facing? What were they doing that made them not finish this task? Yes, there was space where we identified audiences and were thoughtful about how does this one thing apply to all of these audiences. But you also have to be realistic. You can't stop time every time there's a decision in that's why I say imperfectly. Like, I think we embody that in our approach and we're thoughtful about that. But if we need to make a quick decision, sometimes I think the balance here is between making a good decision and a swift decision. And sometimes you can get both. But like the swift decision might be called upon based on your enormous amount of experience in the space. But when we do that, we stereotype and we might be immune to some other piece of information that could come in. So it's just, I think a lot of it too is just honesty. Like, just because I was the executive director starting on January 6th, 2014 doesn't mean I had anything figured out. But we were going to commit to getting it right. That maybe is the only thing I could offer at that point. We could do some Q&A too. I want to just explain what I meant by this exercise of 5 times why, because I think it's really, really important.
Let's do that.
And Nicki, I'm going to start.
It's already,
So
yes.
when we define spaces to reflect, we wanted to check that everything that we were doing in service to others passed that test. So for example, at the Baltimore ToolBank, we have a bunch of gloves. We wash the gloves, they get loaned out, they come back. Sometimes volunteers like Nicki come and help us sort those gloves into pairs. And you'd be surprised how, I know it sounds really remedial, but pairs being a right and a left of a matching glove, you'd be surprised how you have to really monitor that. So if we were going to
I was going to interject here. I didn't know I had OCD until I was always on the gloves. And it wasn't just a right and a left. It was like, some of them had like yellow blacks or backs. Some of them had orange. And I was like, you can't have a yellow and an orange. Like I was super. So I have this pile of all these rights that were like all these different colors. And then I have all these lefts. I'm like, they're not the same. And then finally, I think somebody came by and they're like, it doesn't matter if it's a right and left, put it together. I'm like, that's going to break me forever. But yep, I think you guys did it on purpose where it's like, Nicki's going to sort the gloves. He's going to sort the gloves.
Glove sorting was what we always had as a project. So when we reached the end of any other project, you round it up by sorting gloves. But here's the thing, right? So the ToolBank has when you get a pair of gloves from us, we're pretty much promising that you have 2 working gloves that are right and left. So we asked the question why 5 times. Okay, why? Why is it important to have a pair of gloves? Well, we give them to members who are doing community projects, and it's part of personal protective equipment. Okay, why is that important? Well, our partners deserve access to this resource that we promised them so that they can do more projects. Why is that important? If you ask it why 5 times, you should get to some big universal thing, because communities deserve to have resources, because communities deserve to have access, and whatever it is. If after asking that question why 5 times, you come up with, well, I need a job, you're doing it wrong. We're privileged to serve in the role because it's a thing beyond I need to have a job. I have another job, but I have this job because communities deserve access to resources, which I think ties back to like the true north. That's how we put it into practice, that we were on the right path, even though we don't have a script for this. No one's really judging other than by feedback. And sometimes that feedback is in the form of a complaint. You didn't do this. All of it is tougher. So I know it's very conversational. We went a lot of different directions there.
I really appreciate the 5 whys. And I'm wondering if we could do an exercise. Yeah. I don't know. To me, it's important to focus on your North Star, your North Star, where you're going. And, I know that we've had a lot of conversations, Noah, and one of the conversations when somebody goes into an organization, you're thinking about funding, it's like, if we didn't exist, what wouldn't be happening? And I feel like that kind of ties into the 5 whys. And the 5 whys should always fall back into the mission, not because we need to employ these people, but back into we need to serve the community. And that goes back into our North Star. So I'm wondering, I know we only have a couple folks on the call, but I'm going to call on you, Geoff and Libby. And I'm just going to say, in your work, is there something that you can think about that I'm going to speak to you. I'm going to totally put you on the spot, Libby. But like, you do a lot of service learning and you do service learning with students. And so what do you think the 5 whys might be about them having those experiences that tie back into not just Montgomery College, but kind of the ethos and pedagogy of service learning? Putting you on the spot, and I'm really willing to help you.
Yeah, this spot, but I would say one is definitely like leadership. Like, how can we build leadership? And then, another why. Just like,
Yeah, why?
uh,
So if you're
just fun. Like,
if we're going to service learning, so why do we do service learning? To build leadership. But why do we want to build leadership in these students?
just to have a new generation of thinkers, people that change the world.
Come up with new ideas, bring new
Innovate.
perspectives. But why? And then, okay, so we're at 3. We're almost there, Libby. So why is that important?
Like, just having a world of people that we want in the world and building them up to be that person, like creating that new world.
Yeah. Well, and that makes me think about Einstein's quote, which he says you can't solve the problem from the same space. So we need these service learning students to go through service learning so they learn how to be leaders, so that they're bringing a different perspective to a problem that we've been looking at. And I will also say, caveat, we shouldn't put all of our problems on this next generation. We should be like, sorry.
Yeah, and we should try to focus on stuff.
At 5. So we, service learning is important because we want to develop leaders and we want to have different perspectives. And then the final thing is, I think it goes back to what you said, Libby, like to build a better, different kind of situation.
Better tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, the question's always got to be answered because we want to build the world that we all want to live and love in. I mean, it's weird, but you can get there pretty quick. I was thinking like the alumni chapter, right? You have board meetings. You got to have some protocol. You could call it Robert's Rule of Order or whatever. But why does that? Well, we do that because it makes it fair and clear for everyone. Okay, why is that important? And then eventually you're getting to like, well, why does this organization need to have fair and clear rules? Because we do something for the world that we think makes it a better place, which sounds really huggy American. What else are we doing with our intellect and compassion, but trying to make the world a better place? Sit ruined. It's not the world that you want to live. You can't. Yeah, it gets meta real quick.
It does. And I love how you can go from micro to meta so fast. Geoff, I'm going to put you on the spot. Can I put you on the spot? I don't know. You're doing work or you're taking notes. I don't know. You're so engaged right now.
I've got a lot of notes.
I don't even know what your 9 to 5 is, or your passion. What if your passion project is? You're in the service committee. Why do we serve? Like, why is it important?
This one's pretty heavy for the end of the day, I'll admit. And I think I'll be saved by the bell by having to pick up my daughter from her first job in just a few minutes. But it's so important. It comes up often in life in my conversations with teenagers, and that is why. Why don't you want to do this? Why do you want to do this? And it's a really struggle. So I love hearing, Noah, from you as an executive leader, that you're thinking deeply about this. For me, in my notes, the defensible positions, the compelling reason, and the whys. If you are doing those habits, you are a super athlete as a leader. And so I really admire that. And I really want to kind of aspire to doing that more often. Because when you're taking time to reflect, and we ask our volunteers to reflect on their experience and if it was what they expected and why not, that's a critical component serving. And
Realize
as it is for leader. Yeah. Oh, yeah, indeed. Yeah. I wouldn't credit that as my own idea for sure. They're brilliant. And so when I hear it, I'm taking notes. And similarly, Noah, just so appreciative too that you'd be engaging AmeriCorps members and showing up as a leader and doing so much good. If you're at the pearly gates someday, you can look back and say, yeah, I did all those good things. That's right. That was me. That's really cool. I hope we can connect maybe offline and just I can continue to, see where your light's shining and follow.
Absolutely. Nicki, if you're a conduit, certainly feel free to share my thing. I know you're a conduit. He had a handcrafted award proving as much. She's a connector. She got that after her service at the Baltimore ToolBank.
I'm a super
might be
connector.
My handwriting on there. But yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate time too. I know this is extracurricular and having space for the conversation is super cool.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Geoff and Libby, for me both putting you on the spot. And I really appreciate, number one, just thinking through some of these things. And if we can ground ourselves in the things that we do as a why, we are all going to find our North Star. And then it all goes into the meta. It's like, of course, why wouldn't we be serving? And it goes past the tragedy of the commons, where that's when we broke up as a civilization, where we're like, of course, tragedy of the commons, you have too many sheep, you're going to come into my territory and you're going to eat my pasture, whatever. So Noah, as we close out, I feel like there's so many directions that we didn't even touch on, but I want to make sure that your message is clear. And I want to make sure also that if there's any takeaways, that you're able to share that with us. And I know we have a stop at 7, but I think we actually said 7:30. So I'm good. This is recording. People can stay on. They can do whatever. But yeah, Noah, I just want you to be able to close up with anything that you're thinking about.
Real practical takeaway, if you're doing service projects in any of the areas, the ToolBank is a resource for community-based organizations, including special events, equipment, all that stuff. So hit me up. We can do that. And just, I'm just grateful for the space. I come in not knowing what everyone's experience is. If you're executives yourself, if you're in a leadership role, but I'm assuming as much. If you're on the board of an alumni group that's service oriented, I imagine you're probably in space. So I'm grateful for the communicating among peers.
That's beautiful. This is something I love to do. I love to bring resources to people. And thank you so much for holding the space. And thank you for the board folks that were able to join. And Rose, it looks like you just jumped in at the last minute. But we're going to record this so you can watch it back. And if you have any questions, you can email me or contact Noah. So we'll wrap this up and we'll have another professional development soon, either in September or October. So stay tuned. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. And Noah, I need to hold your ear for just 1 second. I promise I won't keep you long.
Thank you.
See you all later.
Thank you, Nicki, Noah.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.